Hello, my fellow Alaskans. How are you all doing out there tonight? I hope you are warmer than I am. I'm in breezy Palmer right now. It is a bit on the chilly side. And let me tell you, if you need to put on your moccasins, maybe a face mask, definitely put on a pair of warm gloves if you plan on spending any time outside in the Wasilla Palmer area with the breeze that is blowing. We are here tonight at the Alaska School of Government. Hopefully you are tuning in right now, and as I am talking, this is coming in loud and clear. I am trying to use the same microphone system that I was using at the courthouse earlier today that I believe their building was knocking out. So it's sounding good so far in my ears, so that's a good sign. We are here tonight at the Alaska School of Government, and they are presenting Representative David Eastman is going to be the key speaker, giving us all an update on the events that have occurred over the last 6 days in the Kowalke versus Eastman trial that has been going on. And hopefully you guys have all been tuning in here live every single day for that case. I have not missed a beat. I have caught every second of it for you to be able to watch anytime that you want. Find it on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook at Politadick and Politadick Unfiltered, and Rumble. And of course, all of this can be found at Politadick. Just Google Politadick. I guarantee I'll be the top 100 searches out there. Just spell my name right and you will be there. At this point, please like and share this video no matter what platform you may be watching this on. The more we share this, the more the algorithm says that they need to let other people see it. The more we like this, the more they says the algorithms will let people see this. I am ashamed that these videos are only getting a few hundred views when we've got 60 shares. 60 shares, that basically boils down to roughly 5 people are seeing each share. That's how much mainstream media is suppressing this from reaching all of you. They don't want you to hear live from people that were directly there on January 6th at the Capitol. The Oath Keepers that stood shoulder to shoulder with the Capitol Police outside, trying to clear up the people that were inside that building, getting them out of there, stopping the battles that was going on outside, putting their lives on the line right there, helping to defend our Constitution and freedoms. They weren't none of the members that were inside of that building that day that went rogue. They were not a part of the full 38,000 chapter that was there. There was only 3% of the 1,000 people was classified as what this lawsuit is all over the Oath Keepers, and the allegiance that comes with taking that oath when you are either a veteran, a first responder, somebody that is serving, have served in our police, anybody that has taken the oath to the Constitution. This is what is on the line. Who's to say you as a member of, say, AARP, aren't targeted next because the board members go rogue and decide to go and pull their own little stunt, something similar to this, and now you are guilty by association for just being a card-carrying member. And that is what they're trying to do here to David Eastman. They want to take away our liberties, our rights, our freedoms from all of us, and we need to stand united. Tomorrow is hopefully, we're trying to cross in our fingers, going to be the last day that they are going to be in trial starting at 9 a.m. I would love to see every Alaskan that is not working tomorrow, that has a short week because of the holiday season and Christmas coming up, to show up in the courtroom tomorrow at 9 o'clock, 9 a.m., courtroom 7 at the Palmer Courthouse on Denali Street. I mean, I don't know how much more I can spell it out to you, but we would love to see that courtroom packed tomorrow, to see the supporters out there showing their support, doing what you can. You wouldn't believe what I personally have given up in my own business to be there for the last 6 days and tomorrow, and there's a good possibility even part of Wednesday, that what it has cost me financially. I look at our freedoms and our liberties. It doesn't matter how much it's costing me. The loss of those is insurmountable, uncalculable, and what it's costing me right now doesn't even surmount to 1 iota of what happens if this case gets lost. David Eastman, our freedoms are all on the line, and it takes each and every one of us standing up united together, making our choices and doing what's necessary to make sure things stay right for all of us, so our future generation, our children, our children's children have a world to grow up in, that they have the same freedoms that we've enjoyed today and don't have them taken away from them. Nobody should have the right to determine how somebody joins, what organization they belong to, and if because of a few bad actors out there, less than 0.0015% of the total 38,000 Oath Keepers was the people that caused this to happen. And they want to blame that minute, that little tiny, barely less than, it doesn't even calculate on a 1 percentile ratio, the fault of everybody else. They want to say that less than 3% of those that actually showed up on January 6th inside of that Capitol, those 3% of those 1,000 are responsible for the almost nearly recorded 1 million people that showed up at the Capitol that day to show their support for President Donald J. Trump in the elections, that did not participate in what happened at the Capitol. I don't know a single person, no matter what party they belong to, that did not condemn the actions on that day, the people that entered in that building. The only person that got killed that day in the Capitol, shot and killed, was Ashley Babbitt, and she was killed by a Capitol police officer. What charges did he face for this unjust death? Nothing. In fact, I think they gave him a medal for it. This is the hypocrisy, the irony. They want to say that there was an insurrection. How could there be an insurrection when the only people that were armed at the Capitol inside the building that day was the Capitol police officers themselves? Answered that question. They have yet to prove any kind of pre-planned event to make sure that this happened the way they claim it did. This was just a spontaneous thing that people got out of control. Someone's organized. Yes, I will say someone, I believe, organized this to happen, and it's not who mainstream media and everybody else wants to spin on out there who it really is. But I'm not going to put that tinfoil hat on today for all of you guys. We're going to keep this straight and keep on what's going on right now. Kowalke's attorney has brought forward 2 very far left witnesses that both belong to university think tanks, that they are the experts on everything Oath Keepers and anything that has to do with the extremist far alt-right. But if you're asked anything that goes on, say, like Antifa or Black Lives Matter or any of those other events going on out there in the world, when it comes to the left wing, far left, domestic terrorists that they have within our nation, you really got to take a look at where the propaganda is coming from. It is extreme. They did not want to touch upon it. They don't want to acknowledge what Antifa did. They don't want to acknowledge the summer of love of Black Lives Matter, the violence, the destruction, the firebombing, the burning of police everything that happened, the federal building, what else got burned down, the church that got burned down, the firebombing of the police cars and police stations. That was what I was trying to get out about the police there just a second ago. All of these things all add up. What they did to Carl Rittenhouse. How about the Sandman just standing there on the Capitol steps with that Native American beating the drum in front of his face? He has made hundreds of millions off of mainstream media for the slander of the far left spin and lies they want to give out there. Same thing they have been doing to Eastman's trial for the last 7 days. Mainstream media should have been all over today's trial. We had live on the air Stewart Rhodes, the founder, the president of the Oath Keepers, on the stand today giving testimony. And mainstream media, where are they? Where is the propagation of his testimony, of actually giving the first-hand accounting of what was going on at the Capitol that day, what his organization and role of his members were, and how he explicitly says those people that did this went rogue. They were not there on the mission of the actual Oath Keepers. They were acting on their own volition. But where is mainstream media to spin that narrative, to actually hear what he's giving on oath? You know, he raised his hand, put his hand on the Bible. He swore the oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If this is a lie, he gets impeached. He gets longer term in jail. If he's lying to them, they could easily do this. They could charge him with that kind of stuff. Where's mainstream media picking up his testimony? Crickets. That's where they are. They don't want any of us, to know this stuff. And the way we beat that is we share, we make sure people get notified. We don't stop spreading the message. They want you not to share it on your personal page. They want you to be afraid you might be sharing fake news. You're not. Stop it. Act like a grown-up. If you don't believe something's true, check several sources. If you see it being reported on the blue checks, let me tell you, the blue checks are not being censored as much as the ones that are not blue checked. Watch where you get your media from. If it's not blue checked and you're not sharing it, and especially on Facebook, that's the best way to know you might be spreading something that might be labeled fake news. Keeps your feeds down. Work hard. Come on now, tomorrow, again, 9 o'clock a.m., we've got David Eastman is going to be back on the stand. Tomorrow is hopefully his last day there. The first person up is going to be Stewart Rhodes, the founder and president of the Oath Keepers. He will be back on the stand bright and early at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. The prosecution, the plaintiff's attorney for Kowalke, is going to be able to start his cross-examination of Stewart Rhodes, and we get to hear how they're going to spin this, and how everything any rogue member of any organization ever does is always the fault of everyone that doesn't participate on a daily basis. Who knows? Next night it might be the Boy Scouts that get targeted, the Girl Scouts that get targeted. They start bringing lawsuits against every person that's ever belonged to those organizations, calling them domestic terrorists because of the oaths that they take and the standards they have and the bylaws they created for the rogue members of a few. Where does it stop? You really got to take a hard look at it. I mean, I could keep going with far-fetched scenarios, but what is this? This is nothing more than just another far-stretched, fun scenario. I mean, really, just because you went to the Capitol, show your love for your country, show that you're a patriot, believe that you love a candidate that might be able to make it, or just in my case, I went to the Trump rally they had in Anchorage at UAA. That was the funnest, most exciting event that I have ever been to in my entire life here in Alaska. Born and raised here, having over 5,000 people there at an event that it was the first time I'd been so involved in a group that you could just feel the love. Nobody was mad at each other. Everybody was laughing. They were all joking. They were all telling stories. They were all reveling in the excitement that was there. And yes, just like at the Trump rally when they were leaving after his speech, the walk away song, they played the YMCA there too. Just as you saw today during the case of Kowalke versus Eastman, the video that they played there, even though it didn't play, the audio of that came through loud and clear. And you could hear the song, you could hear the theme, you could hear the people in the crowd, just the excitement that was there. This is what mainstream media fails to show any of us. They know for a fact they have over 500,000 people recorded there. The best estimates are putting the crowd at being over 1 million people showed up on January 6th that day. Where is that kind of publicity? They want you to focus on just those small fraction, the 1,000 people that broke the law and entered the Capitol that day. They don't want you to remember all those others, that 1 million other people that were outside that had nothing to do with that. This is what they want you to forget. They want to vilify all of them. They want to vilify anybody that's a conservative, that has conservative values. If you don't think the way that they do, you're next. And that's what this case of Eastman against Kowalke against Eastman is all about. I'm not sure when this is going to begin. It was supposed to start about 11 minutes ago. It's 7 o'clock was when this is supposed to begin. I find it really amazing that mainstream or alternate mainstream media finally decides to show up today. I see them in the background here. I'm going to spin this camera around so you guys can see here. And can you see who finally showed up? After 6 days in court, 6 days in court, they're on the same ticket. They've got the same press release that I have to be inside the room. They could be streaming all of it from start to finish. They could be in there giving the upfront direct reporting to what's going on in that room. But no, they're not there for that. They want to be someplace that they can put their own spin on it. That's nothing to do with the actual trial, hearing the full evidence being presented in front of them. This is the fun and games that they play with all of us. Wow, we got to wake up. You saw David Eastman there in the background. They are not that far away from getting started here. And let's see if that does a little bit better. Oh man, I'm really screwing up cameras there now. Yeah, I got everything out of focus. It just that's what happens when I look at my camera and see me as I have my face literally up in front of the phone, but think I'm sitting down at that point. So, all right, so all of you guys out there, we're having a bit of fun here tonight. We're at the Alaska School of Government Real Life Church in Palmer, Alaska. Google Real Life Church, you'll know right where this place is. They are guaranteed to meet at least once a month, and I'm guaranteed to be there at least once a month. And if it's a political season, I'm probably here once a week on a Monday live streaming everything that's going on, just like I've done this entire week for the David Eastman, Kowalke, the entire fiasco that is going on there. As I said earlier, at the prosecutor's star left-wing witnesses, they didn't know anything when it came right down to who these organizations are. Now let's move on to the defense's star witness, the one expert that they brought in to counter their two far left-wing witnesses. He was an expert on extreme terrorism, worked for the DOD, worked for the several of the defense departments out there. Plus, on top of that, is I believe, ex-military in several different directions and worked on the presidential details, keeping and protecting against these far extremists that are out there within our country. And he gave very good cutting out of not just the far right. He went all the way to bring in all the extreme domestic terrorists and non-domestic terrorists. In other words, your international domestic terrorists, like let's talk about ISIS, things like that. But he brought all the ones that are sitting here homegrown that are into the picture that those far left experts that the prosecutors had brought on board didn't want to talk about. They did not like the idea that there's other type of extremists living in America. God forbid something like that ever could be possible. Oh, geez, someone else out there that's is an extremist, like the KKK, who doesn't exist, but Antifa.com does, but they don't, or Antifa does, but they don't want to talk about that. And the reason why I always seem to throw that .com at the end there, type it into Google, Antifa.com. It will take you directly to the White House's press page, and you can find out all the latest news about what's going on at the White House at this current moment in time. During the campaign season, that same words would bring you directly to their campaign page for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for donating to their campaign to help them out. If you don't think they don't know anything about Antifa, just Google it. I mean, how stupid do people gotta be? You know, if this was how out in the open do you have to be about what's going on? I mean, this, just me saying it right now, could get this censored off of the YouTube and on Facebook and Twitter. Oh, maybe not Twitter anymore. Elon's kind of laxed things up a little bit to where this would actually be allowable because it's the truth. But the other two, So it looks like they might be getting going here, and I'm crossing my fingers my big boom mic works today and doesn't have the same problems it had while I was trying to stream at the courthouse. I see Edna's got a microphone in her hand, so that means they might be a little bit closer to getting this rolling. Again, this is David Eastman's going to give us an update today on everything that has been going on the last 6 days. Tomorrow is his last day in court. Palmer Courthouse, 9 a.m. We would love to see you there. If you have nothing better going on, even if you do got something better going on, make the time, show up. We need your support. He needs your support. We need to be showing this judge that our liberties are online, and Alaskans are not going to put up with a judge determining who's going to be going to Juneau based upon their views on who can and who can't serve within our legislation. People voted by ballot. We don't vote by bench. The bench doesn't determine our election, the ballot does, and the ballot determined that David Eastman won his election by resounding numbers, that he is number one in the slot and he should be going to Juneau, and this judge should have no right telling him that he shouldn't. No matter how this case ends up here and gets decided, I'll guarantee you it's going all the way to the Supreme Court. It really has no choice. There's only one direction left for this to go when it's all through, and David Eastman really does need help. So if you can help out to donate to his organization, go to davideastman.com and go to his website, and you can find all the legal information you need to be able to get to help support him out. And again, thank you guys all for being here today. Please like, share, make sure people get notified about this video. I know I am just rambling on. Hopefully we got a good audience going on here and people are doing a good job of making sure this is liked and shared. If you're on Rumble or you're not on Rumble, please go to Rumble and sign up. And then type in my name, Politadick, and become a subscriber. We need 100 people there to be able to live stream live directly to Rumble. And until we get 100 subscribers there, they want me to pay for it. Well, to be able to pay for it, that means I need you out there as an audience to start helping support us. And if you're not willing to support us financially, just help us support us by becoming a person that subscribes to our channel. Get us that much closer to doing something that doesn't cost money. That kind of support goes miles. That's like donating $100 to me right there every month, just by becoming a subscriber. I mean, I tell you, little things like that is what make things possible. Every little bit that we do to help each other makes things, our goals, achieve what they need to achieve. It's not always the financial things that help. I'll tell you what, one of my supporters out there brought me lunch today at the courthouse. Now, you talk about support, that's loving it. All right, looks like Edna's ready to get rolling. I'm going to shut up and let her have the screen.
Anyway, well, thank you all for coming, and so if you'll all stand, please. My husband's going to do an opening prayer, and Mike Coons called and asked us to hold up his mom in prayer. I think many of you know that, honey, you're standing right in front of the thing there.
Sorry.
And I'm not on the video enough here, so I want to take advantage. Anyway, he's having some problems with his garage door tonight, so he's not going to be here, but he did ask us to hold him and his mom up. He's leaving on Wednesday, and his prayer is that he gets there before she passes so he can give her advice. You all, or many of you probably know that his mom is quite ill. So anyway, and I don't know, maybe there's other people here too that have people that are, you know, sick or passed away or something. So we'll just have a, before no praise, we'll just have a moment of silence where you can just pray quietly. So Lord, since Mike did ask for prayer, Lord, we just lift him up. We ask, Lord, that there just be peace upon him, safety as he travels, Lord Jesus, and be with his wife and family as they're probably staying here behind, and just be with him and let him get his wish, Lord, that he will be able to say his goodbyes to his mom before she passes on. So, and then honey, you open with prayer.
Thank you, Lord. You say in your word, where the Spirit of the Lord, there is liberty, Lord. So help us to be sensitive to your Spirit so we can enjoy the Spirit, enjoy the liberty. It's such a necessity, Lord. not only for ourselves, but for our children. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. And and Eric, let's see, oh, there you are. Okay, Eric's going to lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So you can be seated. Thank you. So we're in a little bit of a quandary, as you know, and especially tonight, many of you I've already hit up regarding boards and commissions. So I found a good person to serve on the planning commission for the borough, and CJ, who many of you know, and both CJ and Eric have been somebody that's been helping us from almost the very beginning. And so the Assembly has confirmed her assignment and her position to the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission meets the first and third Mondays. So, and as you know, that's when we have met. So we are considering changing it to the second and fourth Mondays, but I wanted to ask to see if there was any of you that presented another problem to anybody that normally comes. So does changing it to the second and fourth, it would still remain here, same time, everything, but instead of the first and the third Mondays, it would be on the second and fourth. Does anybody have a problem with that? Or, okay. So anyway, so we will go ahead and do that starting in January then. So anyway, as you know, one of our very beloved conservative legislators is having the challenge of his life to date. 5 years from now, maybe we'll be doing a new challenge that he had. Somebody that I love like a brother and a son both, and so he'll bring us up to date on what is going on. I had thought about doing silent auction and that kind of thing, but I know some of you have already came tonight with wanting an opportunity to donate to his fund. And so I just encourage that, of course, in the Christian circles, that you do a spiritual handshake, you know, where you have the money in your hand and then you just shake their hand and transfer the money to them. So I just encourage you all, and I know this is the holiday season, but we do want to be able to continue, that this country continues to be by the people and for the people, and not for and by the judges. So, David, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you take as much time as you want, and then we'll have time for questions and anything. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And then if any of you have to leave, you know, I know we're 7:24 here. If you got to leave in 5 minutes and I don't get a chance to offer you one, we have enough envelopes for everyone. They'll be on the chair right here.
So I just put back some on the table, okay?
Oh yeah, by all means. There's more than enough to go around. You know, when Ed and I were first talking about my getting up here and talking about the court case, we were hoping that by now the trial would be over. We'd have a verdict. We'd have something to tell you about as far as the final decision. But no, today was day 6 of the trial. Tomorrow we're going to have another full day of trial, day 7. We'll see where it goes from there. It's not going to end tomorrow. I know that much. I want you to picture for a moment a scenario which you might find unlikely. We wake up tomorrow morning and you read in the front page of the ADN 2 things. Russia and the U.S. have declared war against one another, so we're now enemies, not just by proxy through Ukraine. Now we're actually going to be fighting each other. And shortly after that declaration, it was discovered that our Attorney General, about half a dozen legislators, a few folks in local city council, our borough mayor, or no, some other borough's mayor, Ketchikan borough mayor. It's come to our attention that they are all on Putin's payroll. They are Russian spies. They are here to make sure that Russia wins the war against us, and they are not on our side. So in that scenario, what should we do? What should the people of Alaska's response be to an attorney general who is now fighting against us as our state attorney general? So as you think about that for a moment, hoping of course that nothing like that ever happens, we do have a provision in our state constitution that handles just such a situation.
Do you want somebody to bring the podium down, or are you okay?
I'm okay for now, but
Okay.
so we have our Constitution here. Hopefully you've all got a copy. And we turn to Article 12. And fortunately, in this scenario, back when our Constitution was being written, it was written in 1955, but they borrowed some language from 1950 in it. And they had a similar situation in 1950, you might recall. There was a Cold War. The Soviet Union and Alaska, America, were not friends. And so they wrote, as part of the opportunity for Alaska to become a state, also for Hawaii, there was much concern that Hawaii was influenced, maybe controlled by communist unions that were in charge of some of the ports and other shipping and whatnot. And those in Congress wanted to put the kibosh on Hawaii coming into the Union as a state because it was under the influence of communism, or some suspected it might be. And the same thing with Alaska. We need to make sure, darn sure, that we don't let the communists, run our states. So they put in both the Hawaii and Alaska constitutions language very similar to this. Theirs has changed a little bit since then. They went back and updated it in the 60s. But it currently reads, no person who advocates or who aids or belongs to any party or organization or association which advocates the overthrow by force or violence of the government of the United States or of the state, beating us in a war would count as a violent overthrow by the Russian military. So that checks that block. No person who does that shall be qualified to hold any public office of trust or profit under the Constitution. And so we would pull out our Constitution, we would look up to our state attorney general, our wayward legislators, our Ketchikan borough mayor, I'm sure it would be somebody different, but and our city councilmen, and we would say, you can't use our government to help defeat us in a war against Russia. Makes sense, right? And that is what we're seeing in this lawsuit here down at the Palmer Courthouse, because the left, led first by the Party for Socialism and Liberation, I would say it's a Marxist front group, but that means that they don't admit they're Marxist. So they're actually a Marxist group, very proud of it, who do actually want to overthrow the government. Go to their website, they'll tell you all about it. Capitalism must be overthrown to save the planet. Capitalism must be destroyed. The military, gone. Police, gone. Our courts, gone. They've got a grand old plan to replace our military with local provincial councils. That'll be our new military, if they get their way. And of course, the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party has come out publicly this year and said, for the first time that I've seen, that one of their political opponents in the legislature, me, needs to have their election overturned to save democracy. Like that. So to save democracy, we are going to tell the people of Wasilla, whom fortunately they have no control over, that they got it wrong. And not just once, because I was just elected to my 4th term in the legislature, so by the way of certain left-wing activists. The people of Wasilla have got it wrong 8 times. 4 primaries, 4 general elections, and you mess up that many times, no more. We're going to have a judge come in. He is going to correct the record and save democracy and make sure that this right-wing network of spies in our government is going to be expunged so that the Constitution, which they are publicly trying to overthrow, can be saved. You follow? All right, everybody up to speed now? I'm not, in this case, I'm not exaggerating because you can go right to their website. It tells you all about how we need to overthrow the government, in this case, our government, which, of course, poses a problem if there are conservative, Constitution-loving Christians in our government who would put a stop to that kind of nonsense. So they must be removed. That's why we call it a purge of conservatives in public office. I am far from the first to be targeted. I am certainly not going to be the last. I just happen to be the one today, and I'm not alone. You might also notice from reading the headlines today that you might have missed it, but on January 6th, 2021, last year, in Washington, D.C., we had a civil war. Fortunately, the United States won that civil war. And the conservatives, the Republicans lost. So we saved democracy. And so we had the January 6th committee who issued their criminal referrals today for Trump, and one of the attorneys who's working on my case and others, so that we can now take advantage of the fact that the laws that were put in place after the first Civil War, keeping Confederates out of office and government and so forth, can be applied to the Republicans. To save democracy, of course. So if you picture what it's like when you have one party in control of 3 branches of government, well, at least the House and the Senate and the White House and occasionally the Supreme Court, and that party is now going to use the government to attack its political opponents, this is how they go about it. Not the only way, this is one of many ways. If you've been watching over the last few months, pro-life speakers and authors being raided by the FBI, being hauled away in handcuffs in front of their young children, this is another way. But it's to the same effect. How do you use the force and the power of government to silence, eliminate, incarcerate your political opponents? And we had that happen here in Alaska on one level, down in Homer, when Paul and Marilyn were raided by the FBI. An FBI agent swore to a judge that Paul and Marilyn were, well, especially Marilyn, were guilty of being part of that civil war, that insurrection. She wasn't. It was a lie. It was a fairly easy to prove lie. You compare her picture with somebody else, they don't look the same. But that was enough for the Capitol Police to come to Alaska with the FBI, go down to Homer, beat down their door, put them in handcuffs, interrogate them for 3 hours, go to their home, grab their copy of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, confiscate it as evidence to be used against them at trial. Yeah, that happened here in Alaska. Eventually, their Declaration of Independence was returned. They had committed no crime. They had done exactly what I and about 1 million other Americans had done. They had traveled to Washington, D.C. to hear the president speak. And for that crime, I was targeted for 8 months in the Alaska legislature. So for 8 months, the left wing here in Alaska had a petition campaign and a resign campaign and expel campaign and emails and phone calls and get your legislature to save democracy and tell the people of Wasilla that they made the wrong choice. Their legislator cannot serve in office. Their votes will not be honored. Fortunately, that 8-month campaign was not successful. They did not find the number of votes in our state house to expel me as the Wasilla representative. They announced publicly that they were 2 votes short. 2 more votes, they say they would have had enough votes to be able to do the job and save democracy from Wasilla. And that should be a scary thought, maybe even a terrifying thought. That you would have nearly, if not every, Democrat legislator in the state house say, yeah, that makes sense. I'm going to use the power of government to cancel the elections of another party that I disagree with. And I'm going to take away their political power and take it to mine by ignoring their election. And putting every other Republican on notice that if they are too conservative, too right-wing, well, we might do it to them too. So how does that help you as a voter be represented and have a voice in government? It's not designed to help you have a voice in government. It's designed to take away your voice. Designed so that no matter who you vote for, no matter which candidate you give money to or go door to door for or campaign for, whatever happens, one thing we can know, you will not have a voice in government. There weren't a lot of Republican Party leaders coming to the front line of that battle. There weren't. Wasn't their battle. The most we got was Republicans who were on the committee where they were targeting me, targeting Oath Keepers, didn't show up to the committee meetings. They just weren't there. While the Democrats lambasted us for being right-wing extremists, perversions of the Constitution, and they've got some new terms which we're trying to figure out still. And I was told after the fact that was great. I should be really thankful that those other Republican legislators didn't join the bandwagon with the Democrats to silence my district's voice in the legislature. That is what passes for courage in the Alaska State House today. 2022, that's where we're at. And I'll tell you, as we're going through this trial, we're hearing from experts who are coming to testify against me, against the Constitution, frankly, but certainly against the Oath Keepers. And if you listen to their testimony, I want you to just add one fact, which will, I think, make their testimony make a lot of sense. Because if you understand their testimony from the standpoint of the United States has been conquered, and we are now living in something much more like the USSR, their approach and their viewpoint and how they are talking about it makes a lot of sense. One of the things that they hold against the Oath Keepers, which the communists have always held against the Oath Keepers, and by that I mean anyone who takes an oath and means it, is that we even have an oath to begin with in the first place. Because if you go back to the early 60s, when Congress had done their investigations, had talked to the whistleblowers from the Communist Party of the 50s, and people who had come out of that, who had devoted their lives to forwarding communism, had turned about face and had become believers. Some had said, I don't want to be part of that for lots of different reasons. And they came and they testified in front of Congress, under oath, some of them. And they said, here are the list of things the communists in this country are trying to accomplish. And they wrote it down and they testified, and it's in the congressional record. You can go and you can look up that list. And on that list, they've got things like abolish private property, some things, all right, part of communism. One of the things on that list is to dismantle the FBI. They didn't like the FBI. Another thing which goes to the heart of this case is they want to abolish the oath of loyalty to the Constitution, which the United States Constitution requires all government officials to take. Back in the 1700s, George Washington and the others wrote into the Constitution that in order to hold office, in order to be president, in order to be in Congress, in order to be a state legislator like me, in order to be a judge, you have to swear an oath of loyalty to the United States Constitution. No if, no and, no but, every single person. If you don't, you can't serve in government. Certainly not at that level. And that is so offensive to those that we are against. That is so offensive to a view of society in which the government at the top decides what's going to happen and everyone else follows accordingly. And so you put someone like Stalin at the top and everyone obeys, or they disappear. And so we can move society so much forward, so much faster, because we have this very efficient way of changing society, of changing the economy, of changing behavior. Things like religion don't get in the way. Things like conscience don't get in the way. And that is why the oath is so offensive, because the oath tells every single person who takes it, you as an individual, even you, Sally, you would have an oath if you served in our government. And you would be on the hook to know at least a little bit about what it means. And then as soon as someone, me, your constituent, Edna, your mayor, Christopher, your legislator, as soon as any of us come to you and say, hey, here's this thing we'd like you to do, don't worry about the fact that it violates the Constitution, then your job is to say no. Even if we've got lots of good reasons for you to do that. And financial incentives. And boy, all the good things that we can do if you only overlook this one area, which is going to violate the Constitution. And in many states, in many countries, that's just the way you do business. That's just the normal, healthy, not really, level of corruption that everyone assumes and understands. But in this country, that's not the way it's supposed to work. In fact, every single American citizen who becomes an American citizen through naturalization, you come to this country, you go through the citizenship process, you have to take that oath. You're not working in government, you're just being a citizen. And you have to take pretty much the same oath. And that oath says, I will be loyal to the Constitution. I will defend it, support it, against enemies, foreign and domestic. In fact, you have to, at that point, take an oath that says, I'm willing to take up arms if my government, requires it of me. If there's a draft, I've got to be part of that. Now, there's conscientious objection and that sort of thing, but for most people, that's part of the understanding, that's part of the oath. And that one ends, so help me God, too, just like the rest. It's not, being a citizen is some kind of lower oath. It's the same oath, it's the same Constitution. I had a friend that I met when I was in the military, when I was a cadet at our military academy at West Point. And he was a cadet at one of the military academies in Poland. And some friends from West Point and we went on a mission trip to a number of the military academies in Europe. We stopped at his. There weren't very many Christians at this particular institution. There was one professor who was Protestant, and I might even be wrong with that. I think he was a Christian, that's all I know. And there was another cadet who was a Christian. And that was it at the time. There was a second cadet who was a Christian who was away in England for an exchange program. So there was just him and one professor. And what he told me is that he was preparing to be a military officer in the Polish military. He was, he's got the good grades. He's getting ready to graduate. In another year, he'll be ready to graduate. become a military officer, he has just one problem. His parents cannot afford the bribe. Because in order at that time to gain that commission to be a military officer, there's an expectation that you provide the money and then you get it. His parents didn't have the money. And so he was looking at graduating, going into this career, and it not being available for him. And in many parts of the world, that's just the way it goes. We have an expectation, going back to our Constitution, that we do things differently here in the United States. But there is no guarantee that it will be that way, or it will stay that way. And if it is not fought for at every time that there's something that comes against it, then we lose that, because that's the way rights are. You don't defend them, they go away. The paper stays the same. You don't need to change the paper to take away your rights. In fact, it's kind of a hassle. So just take away your rights and ignore the paper. And your rights are gone. And you didn't even know. But they did. And if you are on the front lines, you can expect, well, just like in any conflict, in any battle, you can expect that there are people going to be taking shots at you. And if you are of the perspective that you can run for office, you can serve in government today without anybody taking shots at you, you are not going to be able to defend your own rights, much less anyone that you're representing. Because the price that is being asked of those who serve in office today in 2022 is a lot higher than that. I'm not the first legislator or Republican legislator here in Alaska to be sued. In the last 2 years, I'm the fourth legislator to be sued by this same law firm. I'm sure I'm not going to be the last one. I mean, this is a system, this is a project. They've been at this for a while. The lead attorney on the law firm that's suing me is an elected representative herself. She serves on the Fairbanks Borough Assembly. Among her campaign donors, she counts Mark Bache, and Adam Wool, and Scott Kowalke, and L.B. Gray Jackson, and over a dozen other Republican legislators or Democrat legislators and former legislators. No Republicans on the list that I can see. I don't know of any Democrat legislators this law firm has sued, just the 4 Republicans so far. Again, you're using the power of government to punish your political opponents. And if you can get away with that, my God, my goodness, what opposition do you have? Because how many Republicans do they need to sue before the other Republicans say, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Whatever it is you need me to do, I'll do it. I don't want my house on the line if I have to sell it to pay the attorneys, to pay the legal bills, and so forth. Who wants that? Who runs for office so that they can have their house on the line? Anybody? Their marriage on the line. A lot of stress. But that's what's being asked of us. I didn't say, gosh, go sue me. I didn't file a lawsuit. It wasn't a battle I chose. Other than going to January 6th and watching the president, and 13 years ago joining Oath Keepers, and running for office. If I would just not run for office, the lawsuit would go away. If I would just resign from the legislature, the lawsuit would go away. And in making that decision, so would your rights. To go to political events without being punished politically by your government. January 6th. To vote for a candidate that you want to represent you rather than representing the folks in Anchorage who have a different opinion. That right too would diminish. And so I'm standing here right now saying, gosh, is there an easier way out of this? Is there some middle road where they can be happy, my voters can be happy, I can be happy. No? Haven't found it? If you see it, let me know. I'm still looking for it. Not hoping to be a political martyr. That wasn't really what I ran for office to do, in case anybody was wondering. And so, if you lose the right, and I had one legislator, say, hey, just don't join any groups, don't be involved in anything, don't support any groups, and then you won't get sued. Okay. Well, how does that work for each of you? Are you supposed to not join any groups either? Groups like the one we're at right now? You're not supposed to join them, not supposed to support them, not supposed to be part of them, then you too cannot get sued. And the left can continue to roll over our rights and reshape our country in the image that they want our country to look at. Understand that this is not a hobby to the people we're up against. This is not a hobby. This is a religion. Just like in 1950, when there were communists willing to bleed and die and lose their houses and, have their families come to ruin over a cause that they believed in. One of the Awana missionaries that I got to know and spent some time with growing up brought out a letter for us at summer camp, Awana summer camp one summer. And he read off this letter, and it was this beautiful letter. And it was about devotion, single-minded devotion. And it was about admiration, and it was about ideals and principles and values. And you're listening to this letter, you say, wow, what a on-fire believer for Christ. And you get to the end of the letter, and he says, and this is a communist describing his beliefs. It has nothing to do with religion, but it does. It's just a very different religion. And they mean it, and they live it, and they believe it. And the law firm that they made me be deposed at down in Anchorage, they chose the location. They made me drive into Anchorage with Joe Miller, my attorney, and sit under a poster of Che Guevara for 4 hours while they had me under oath to answer their questions. And they made me, with the judge's support, go during the middle of my campaign and gather more than 30,000 pages of personal correspondence and give it to my political opponents so that they could start posting it on Twitter. Now, ostensibly, I have to do that to prove that I am not that Soviet spy and that I should be able to continue to represent my voters in our state government. The cost of doing so is getting higher, and today it is very high. And if you have a legislator who's willing to run for office and go and be in Juneau and defend your rights, but is not willing to be subjected to a lawsuit, possibly lose their job, possibly receive a criminal indictment for holding the wrong political view, if your legislator isn't willing to do some of those things, they aren't representing you. Because that is the cost that the left is making us pay for the privilege of holding views that they are opposed to. And when I say opposed, I don't mean the hobby opposed, like we can all agree to disagree opposed. I mean the planet is under attack. It is under attack. Climate change is real. We must save the planet or die trying. And maybe it's someone on the other side that we want to die trying. But if you look at it from the standpoint of faith, I mean the religious faith we're talking about, so this law office that I had to go down to, you had the picture of Che hanging over my head on the right side. You had a different picture of Che in front of me on the wall. You had a third picture of Che behind me to my right on the wall. Behind here you had two pictures of the Black Panther Party, celebrating the Black Panthers from the 60s. You had a picture of Angolan communists with an AK-47 talking about solidarity in Angola, probably from the same time period. This is not a hobby for the people who we are up against. This is a religious commitment to justice, their justice. Justice for the planet. Justice for the people. Capitalism represents injustice. Capitalism represents white supremacy and racism and inequality and a good many other things that are evil and wicked and must be destroyed. If they are not destroyed, we cannot advance to utopia. We can't. Utopia is there. We can see it just around the corner, but there's somebody standing in the way. Not just one person, there's a few people, but right now, as we're going there, who's the first person in the way? Well, right now in my trial, it's me. I am the one in between us and justice and freedom and equality and righteousness and peace. And once we remove the capitalists and the conservatives and the Christians, then we will get there. But until we do so, we can't get there. I'm in the way. Edna's in the way. Many of you are in the way. You don't have to be elected to be in the way. You just have to be opposed to them politically. Because we cannot advance as a society if even one member of our community is holding the wrong views. It can't be permitted. Which is why, whether you go back to the 1920s, the 30s, the 40s, you look at classical Marxist doctrine, there's no opportunity for a divergence of views. That just doesn't exist. The might will make right. The party in power will enforce its view on everyone else, and you will learn to be quiet, or they will silence you. And maybe it isn't as dramatic as going to a Siberian gulag. That has happened. Maybe it'll be more innocuous. You're no longer on social media. Or, like if you happen to be Kanye West, maybe they'll just cancel your bank account. You're not holding the right views. Now, I'm not here to say his views are right. I am here to say that if they can cancel his bank account as a billionaire, I know they can cancel yours, they can cancel mine. I don't think any of us in this room would be immune from what they have planned. And they are right now building the tools to accomplish that. They have a goal, they are working, many of them, very dedicatedly to do so. And so in my trial this week, we talked about the Oath Keepers. They just so happen to be in the way, like a lot of other groups. But today, they're on the front of the lines. And the experts that we got to testify against us, to tell us why the Oath Keepers are bad, tell us that they're white supremacists and worse. Of course, I'm all of those things. That goes without saying. After they had talked at length about all of the things that are bad with the Oath Keepers, and how they are really not supporters of the Constitution, and they're believing in perverse patriotism and so forth, my attorney, Joe Miller, asked their expert a question. So, why do we have oaths anyways? And their expert, without missing a beat, said, I don't know. You can go back and watch it. But, whereas in a constitutional republic, like our founders gave us, you have an oath to uphold the Constitution. Not to uphold President Trump, not to uphold Joseph Biden, not to uphold Ronald Reagan. If you really like him, I did. To uphold the Constitution. But, again, fast forward, Capitalism has been dethroned. The Civil War was put down. We are now living in a post-constitutional republic. And from the perspective of the expert I was talking with, that certainly seemed to be his view. And in that view, I mean, put yourself in East Germany. Why do you have an oath to the Constitution? I don't know. You don't need one. You just follow orders. You do what whoever's on top tells you to do, you get by. And in East Germany, there's some lessons I think that can help us all. The founder of Oath Keepers was interviewing another Oath Keeper from Texas, from East Germany. He had been a lieutenant colonel in the East German military at the fall of the Berlin Wall. And he described what happened and how it played out. And he talked about how he, as a military officer, was one of the, communist representatives for the military. He got elected by his fellow military officers to be the party representative. And so he had this, nominal party officer position in addition to being a military officer. And so he had kind of an inside view to how things happened. And he talked about the time that he got the tip off that they were about to plant incriminating evidence in his apartment, and he needed to head over there right now. So he grabs some guys and he heads over there and catches them in the act, kicks them out of his house, and they stop messing with him. But that wasn't the main show. The main part that he was talking about was what happened in the 1980s in East Germany. It's very much like what you see if you've been following the news in China. The white paper protest. If any of you haven't seen, it's not a good place to protest anything in China. And so people have gone to holding up blank white pieces of paper. They're not actually protesting anything. So it's hard to convict them of any particular crime. They're not actually advocating for anything. They're just thousands, tens of thousands of people holding up their white piece of paper. And the East Germans were doing something very similar in the 1980s. And there was a walk that they would do in the afternoons. They would just walk down the street all at the same time. They wouldn't say anything. They wouldn't hold up any pieces of paper. They would just go for a walk together. And yet the people in East Germany knew that they were protesting the tyranny. And the walk kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it came to a head, and the order went down to the East German military to intervene and put an end to it. And those in the East German military said, no, we're not going to. And 2 days later, the Berlin Wall fell. Peacefully. Because when the military does not back the secret police recognizes they don't have the power, they very quickly take off their Gestapo trench coats and blend in with the crowd. I'm not with them. And the Berlin Wall fell. Now, what happened earlier in East Germany's history was tragic, because earlier there were conscientious military officers in East Germany who knew what their constitution said, because they had one. They had a constitution just like us. It says, it wasn't written exactly the same, but it said you cannot use the military other than for defense. It cannot be used aggressively to, invade peaceful countries and so forth. And Russia ordered them effectively to invade Czechoslovakia and put down the uprising in Czechoslovakia. And there were many good men who said, no, we're not going to take tanks into Czechoslovakia, we're not going to put down peaceful protests. And at the time, the Communist Party was quite strong, and those officers were never heard from again. So there can absolutely be a cost. or saying no. And if there had been more people willing to do that, perhaps, the Berlin Wall would have fallen a lot sooner. In this case, it didn't happen until 1989. Oath Keepers talks about wanting to encourage police and military and others in government positions to, like legislators, myself, to honor their oaths so that the first time those unconstitutional orders are given, they stop. And it doesn't happen. There's a list of 10 things that the Oath Keepers said, hey, these are 10 unconstitutional situations where we recognize there are violations of the Constitution, like putting innocent people in concentration camps, which our country did a few decades ago in World War II, with over 100,000 Americans, innocent, convicted of no crime, sent to concentration camps because they were Japanese, Italian or German or whatnot. If people had been more conscientious about following their oath then, maybe that wouldn't have happened. We can hope. But regardless, there are not enough people in government today who are willing to pay the price to defend our rights. I can say that from personal experience. I suspect Christopher would probably say the same thing. Practically speaking, your rights do not exist in Juneau today. They don't. They're on that paper. Just like in East Germany they were on that paper, but they are not defended. And one particularly black and white example since I've been in the legislature was the bill that came from Governor Walker, which was endorsed by his Attorney General, and it said, we are going to pay off our debts to the oil industry, and we're going to do that by creating $1 billion of bonds. It's going to be $1 billion bond package. It's going to create enough money for us to pay off those debts. The oil industry is going to be glad to have their obligations to the state, from the state, paid off. It's going to be great. There was at least one problem with this arrangement. Our Constitution says that if you're going to create bonds, which are debt, it needs to go to the people of Alaska for a vote. They need to say yes or no. The Attorney General at the time, Lindemeyer said, no, it doesn't. And here's a very long memo for all the reasons why we can get here to where $1 billion of debt are not actually debt. And so therefore the people don't actually have to vote for it. And you can go and read the memo, it's artistic. And the reason I share that with you now is not because that's the only time our government has trampled on the rights of the people. The reason I share it with you is because there were 3 Republicans in the legislature, House and Senate combined, who voted no on that particular bill. Glad to say that my Senator Micheal was one of them. Glad to say that Mark Newman was another. I was the third. And every single other legislator found a reason or reasons to vote for it, even though it was blatantly unconstitutional. And they knew it was. It wasn't that confusing. Get right down to it. And of course, someone did sue, and it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, that's unconstitutional. But you already knew that. But your rights are not secure in Juneau because there's no commitment from our legislators, other than a couple, to defend them. If you need to unpack it for you, it goes something like this. Well, I'm just a legislator. I don't really know what the Constitution means. So I'm going to vote for it now. And if the Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional, then I'll go with whatever they say. Of course, that puts the burden on someone of you to find the money, to file the lawsuit, to get the attorney, to take it to court, and to point out what we all knew from the beginning, it's unconstitutional. And then to wait a year or 2 years, I think it was 2 years in this case, for the Alaska Supreme Court to get a hold of it and to look at it and say, duh. But the legislators who all voted for that, and not all of them did, but the legislators who did said, in one way or another, it's not my job to defend the Constitution. It's not my job to defend your rights. And they made a political decision. And political decisions are what prevail in Juneau today. And so when I say your rights don't matter, I mean, as long as the politics are good, your rights are secure. Your rights are protected as long as it's politically expedient for the average legislator to vote for it. You can sleep peacefully at night. Your rights are absolutely protected. But the minute it is no longer politically expedient, it doesn't matter if your rights are written down. So that's what we are up against. I know Christopher's had to deal with that. I've had to deal with that. I suspect in your day, Edna, you had to deal with similar challenges. I'm sure they were similar enough. And yet here we are in 2022. So day 7 of my trial will be, they're going to bring me back up on the stand for the 3rd time, I guess, 3rd or 4th time. And they're going to ask me more questions about my membership in Oath Keepers, about my decision to go to DC on January 6th, and try and point out again how to make their case that I am effectively an enemy of the state and should not be able to hold any position in government, and my family's livelihood should disappear. And then they're going to hear from Stewart Rhodes, who's the founder of Oath Keepers again, from his prison cell, because they've already convicted him in Washington, D.C., which, anybody remember what the percentage vote for Joe Biden was in Washington, D.C. in the last election? 93%. So if you think, as a conservative, you're going to get a jury of your peers in Washington, D.C., you're not. And that is why every case of that nature gets a conviction. Because it would be almost unthinkable not to vote to convict someone as bad as that. And that's why the federal prosecutors have been making sure that no matter where the issue happens, they file the case in Washington, D.C. They get a jury that is politically biased in Washington, D.C. They get the conviction they were looking for, or the plea deal. In my case, they have been trying, and the judge is going along with it, they have been saying, well, there was somebody in another state that had a plea agreement and they admitted to the following things. So we're just going to take all those things that they agreed to, and we're going to say they're true. And we're going to use that against you, me in this case. Now there's a lot of reasons that you sign a plea agreement. One of them is because you're guilty. One of them is because you can't afford to fight it. One of them is because they offered you a better deal. And there's probably other ones that would take too long to list. That is not the sort of thing you're supposed to be able to do in the United States. That is not justice. That is a perversion of justice. Also, telling me that I'm not entitled to a jury is another perversion of justice. And that's what they told me. I am not entitled to a jury in this trial. How they get there is artistic. Because, of course, a jury is a right that we all have, particularly if the amount in question is above $250. So in my case, so let's just try and do the math. In my case, they are coming after me for my current seat in the legislature and the salary that goes with that. They're coming after me for my position in the next legislature, which is 2 years worth of salary, benefits, and health care for my family, and all the things that go along with being a legislator. They're coming to me and asking for a nominal amount, like $1, to prove that I'm guilty, just symbolically. And they're asking for their attorney's fees, which are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that doesn't count the hundreds of thousands of dollars in my attorney's fees, because my attorney has a law office, employees that work for him, they have families, they're working hard in my case. My attorney's not sleeping. I was fortunate to get 3 hours of sleep last night. For the last 4.5 months, a lot of times that's good. Because remember, they filed the case in the middle of my campaign to ensure that they would not go to trial, because they would simply keep me from campaigning. Knocking on doors wasn't an option in my race. I was in court, Joe Miller was in court. If I wasn't in court, I was getting ready for the next day in court. If I wasn't doing that, I was trying to figure out where those 30,000 pages of emails and other correspondence were, getting them ready to send off to my political opponents. And so I was never supposed to get this far, so it wasn't going to be an issue, because as soon as I back out of the campaign, as soon as I back out of the race, the lawsuit goes away. As soon as the people in my district get smart and don't vote to re-elect me, the lawsuit goes away. There is no trial. So we were never supposed to get here, but here we are. And so, as we look at the next 2 days, the judge already decided that the whole value of the trial is actually less than $250. And so therefore, I'm not entitled to a jury, because we're not going to count things like salaries. We're not going to count their attorney's fees. We're not going to count my attorney's fees. We're only going to count the dollar that they asked for, and that's less than $250. So no jury. And that's what my family and I have been living with for the last 4.5 months. And there's more, and I could tell you all about the legal documents, and it would be academically very interesting, but I won't tonight. I'll tell you, you can go to my website. We've got all the legal documents, all the main ones, posted there for you to read, for you to share with others. If you know an attorney that is interested in the First Amendment, that is interested in the right to not be assumed guilty and then have to prove your innocence in court, the right to associate, like we are doing by coming here together now tonight, without being punished by your government. You know, an attorney that cares about those things, we'd love to have their help on the case, because Joe's just one guy, and he's being pulled in an awful lot of different directions. And I help him where I can, but I'm not an attorney, and there's a lot that I can't do, and only he can. So, when I hold up a stack full of envelopes and I say, we've got enough for each of you and probably most of your friends, that's why I'm asking. Because they are literally trying to destroy us.
We passed them out already. didn't we?
Oh, you did? Oh.
And they will not rest until we are gone. They will not rest until they have removed the obstacles to where they are trying to get to.
Can we take some questions?
I can take some questions, yes, Anna.
So,
Is there another microphone?
yes, yeah, Jessica has a mic there, so anybody has some questions they would like to ask? Raise your hand.
And I'm not always wearing a suit, but this has been my uniform for the last 7 days and longer. Most of the last campaigns is kind of what I've been wearing. So that's why I'm still in a suit from trial today. Who has a question?
Just out of curiosity, as being one of the spectators in the room, chuckling at times, shaking my head, wondering what the hell. Where's the mainstream media through all of this? I mean, I know I'm not the only one that's signed up to be pressed inside of the room. I see a couple of them that are in there with their typewriters, so to speak, of the olden days, but now laptops. And one camera that shows up for their 30-second live spot that they're putting on the news at night to spin their narrative with. Where is the mainstream media news? I mean, even here tonight, I finally see someone else show up that may be streaming this right now. but where are they for your trial? And where is everybody else? Where is everybody that's in this room not in there during this trial showing their support for David Eastman? That's my question.
I've been very glad that some of you have been able to join in. My family and I spent most of the day together in the courtroom, and we're grateful for everyone who's been able to watch online or come and visit us in the courtroom or make a donation. We're grateful for all the prayers and everything that everyone's been doing and the well wishes. And we did, for me it was a new one. We hit the Rachel Maddow show this campaign because of the lawsuit. They didn't have anything nice to say about us, no surprise there. But surprisingly, we also were in the ADN. And the ADN editorial board, not conservative, mostly Marxist, they actually came out and said that they hoped that I win my lawsuit. Now recognize they had, politically speaking, they had to couch it a certain way. They had to start it with a couple paragraphs of invectives, fascist, terrible, horrible, right-wing extremist. And then at the end, they had to do the same thing again just to make sure they were covering themselves. But right there in the middle, it said, gosh, that's a really bad deal if he actually loses. The Washington Post actually said the same thing. This week, the Washington Post said, this is a really bad deal. So the mainstream media, to some extent, is aware. But I'll tell you, it is not a case that they are proud of at the moment. So they are not flashing it across national news. It's not a case of, some white person beating up on some minority that's going to help their political cause. So they've pretty much been silent. So thank you very much, Bert, for being there every day. We appreciate you being there.
Thank you, David, for putting up with this and not going away, not stepping up. Before my questions, just a quick comment. When I was sitting next to my wife, you were speaking, and she leaned over when we were talking, and she said, "So Republicans are to be seen and not heard." And that was kind of been my experience in the last 2 years in the legislature. Is you can be a conservative, you can be a Republican in the legislature, but in name only, because we don't actually want you to be standing in the way. If you stand in the way, we need to make an example of you. And I think this case is not about David at all. I think David is just the poster child. This is about sending a message to the rest of us. You need to shut up, you need to sit down, and you need to roll with the punches. Because standing up and fighting and actually providing real opposition that's unacceptable. And this case is about, I think this case is national implications. I'm very deeply concerned about it, because it is essentially saying that if you have fealty to the Constitution and not to somebody in government, you are ineligible to hold office. I think that applies to all of us. David just happens to be the Oath Keeper is on record. So my question is, so you mentioned in the state constitution, Article 1, Section 16, civil suits trial by jury. The language actually is, in civil cases where the amount in controversy, seems like hundreds of thousands of dollars is a controversy, exceed $250, the right of trial by jury of 12 is preserved to the extent as existed in common law. But the interesting thing is in the U.S. Constitution, in the 7th Amendment, in suits at common law where the value of controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved. I know, technically speaking, for us originalists, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, really should only apply to restrictions on the federal government, federal courts. However, it seems like across the board, the Bill of Rights, or should have been called Bill of Limitations, has been extended across the board to local government and the states, especially things like the First Amendment. So what I'm wondering is, why is that, and why is that being ignored? Would that be even a question? Would that be a question if we go on to federal court?
Yeah, so short answer to that, and there's a longer answer, but the short answer is this. My case is the first suit where a judge has opened the door and said, you, in fact anyone in this room, can file a lawsuit against anyone in government personally. You can sue them personally, simply for being in government. So simply for being elected, I can be sued, and I am being sued personally because I am a legislator. So the lawsuit would go away the moment that I step down, because it's about me being in government. That's the contention. And that is a brand new idea. No one has entertained the idea that just by virtue of being in government, you, Christopher, can sue me personally and come after me for attorney's fees and the rest of it. So that's new. That's how, since we're civilly, we're not criminal. We're not dealing with indictments. We're not dealing with a grand jury. We're not dealing with criminal charges. None of that applies because none of that is in this case. But since we've got this new avenue for people to be sued personally, now you can come after me and you can make me, in fact, demonstrate my innocence and say I'm not that Soviet spy we were talking about. I am actually an American. My loyalty is to the United States, not some other country. So that's the short answer, and that's how we get to where we are. But recognize that's not the first time a court in this state has decided that what's on the paper in the Constitution actually isn't what we're going to do. We're going to do something else. Because we have extreme abuses in our government from our judiciary, taking our Constitution and saying it actually means the opposite of what was put into it. One example, which I've used before, I think some of you might be familiar with, whenever we as a legislator, whether Christopher or I or anyone else in the legislature puts forward a bill to change the Constitution to have an amendment, our attorneys come back to us and they give us the draft and they say, all right, here's the language to accomplish what you're trying to do. We're going to add, the following language to the Constitution. And there's a little asterisk at the bottom, and it says, by the way, we're not entirely sure, but your amendment to change the Constitution might be unconstitutional. You follow that? Because our Supreme Court, a few years back, in a case called Bess, decided for the first time that they, as the Supreme Court, can veto constitutional amendments. You can put it forward, the people can vote on it, it can pass, and the Supreme Court can say, no. That amendment is unconstitutional. I don't know of any other state in the country that's gone that far to basically create for themselves a veto power to veto changes to the Constitution. But our state has. That's where we're dealing with. That's, as a legislature, you could respond to that through various ways, impeachment being one of them. Our legislature hasn't, and so it's continued. Other questions?
So when do you think, will the trial wrap up this week, you think, or what do you think?
I'm expecting it to end on Wednesday,
Okay.
and then Christmas will happen, and sometime after Christmas we'll get a decision.
Okay.
And because this is a political case, whoever doesn't get everything they want is going to appeal. I think they indicated at the beginning that they were already planning on appealing at some point, so it's expected to go into next year, into the next legislative session.
And then, sorry, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I just wanted to say something.
David, I'm going to sound a little bit maybe confusing, but at the outset, what I want to say is thank you. But for me, it's like a day late, $1 short, to be honest with you. And that's where it's a little bit conflictual. Maybe not sounding so flattering as I would like to sound, because there's a history that I have now. And mine would represent this. As Christians, we ought to know very clearly that man has a sinful nature, and it's not static. It gets worse, especially if it's not held accountable. Would you like me to say that again? Because a lot of people just don't understand that. do not hold people accountable. They get worse.
Right.
Okay? Want me to say it again?
Yes.
Because if you don't get it, you're done. You are being fried as we speak. I can tell you that for a fact. Why? Because I'm a whistleblower, but it was 2013. We're not 2013 anymore. Whistleblowers then were held in an office and no one on the outside knew what was going on. They wouldn't let that information out. And so a lot of what I struggled with was private. And they kept it private. And I was fired. What did I do? I told the truth. That's what I did. What's yours? Oath Keeper? Well, I'm a truth keeper. And I don't compromise. But the government, at Palmer Corrections and Avtech, both of them were in cahoots to get rid of me because I was a whistleblower. They don't want to be looked at in a way that doesn't look like they're fulfilling their statutes and regulations, and all the rest of the things that they pretend to tell you. They're not public servants. They just aren't. What they are is in preservation mode of themselves. And I got a book for you. If you want to read a really good book, really short book, it's called The Red Tape Letters. You ever read the Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis? This is written just like the Screw Tape Letters, but it's about bureaucracies and how to grow them. Red Tape Letters, a great book. Some people would laugh at it. I look at it and it makes me infuriated because I know it's the truth, how they build their systems. So David, here's the last question. Here's my actual question. As I went into the bureaucracy to try to get it to pay attention to the details of what I experienced as a whistleblower, every single time from Sean Parnell, Bill Walker, and Mike Dunley, every single one of them acted the same way. Dismiss them. Screw you. What do you think we are? Public servants. Exactly. They all did. And so I'm going to ask you, do you have expectations of Mike Dunleavy to come to your aid in this? Or let's go even further. How about to the aid of the Wasilla voters? There's a number of them, and he is the governor of them as well. Where is he?
The short answer is the Attorney General, appointed by the governor. One of his jobs is to enforce the laws in the state. There are other jobs. The Attorney General's office is in the courtroom every day, either in person or on the internet, and they speak from time to time. But they made the decision early on in the case that they're not going to take a position. The question is, whether I'm a terrorist or a Soviet spy, take your pick. They're not going to take a position on that question. They're going to let me defend myself and defend the legislature too, because again, one branch of this government is trying to tell the other branch who can be in it. And in the Constitution, we have a provision that says that only the legislature, in fact, only the House of the legislature that you're in, can expel you from the legislature. And it takes a 2/3 vote. We have a judge who's being asked to do it with 1 vote, which is unconstitutional. The other thing which also directly impacts not just me, but everyone else in this state, is that the judge early on in this case made the public announcement that the Division of Elections, represented by the Attorney General, is going to be responsible legally under the Constitution anytime anyone files for office and wants to put their name on the ballot for you to vote for. The Division of Elections, according to this judge, now has a legal responsibility to make a subjective determination on whether or not they are actually a loyal American. And if they're not, then they cannot put that person's name on the ballot, because that would be unconstitutional. But again, this case was never supposed to get this far, because they were supposed to, with the media, and by preventing me from campaigning, and by taking all the money that would have gone to my campaign, most of it, and making me spend it in court defending myself, we were never supposed to get to this point. We were already supposed to have given up. But here we are. Yes, Ed?
So could the Division of Elections certify your election if they so desired right now?
So the executive branch, headed by our governor, elected by the people, is a branch of government.
Right.
The judicial branch, not elected,
Right.
is a different branch.
Right.
The legislature is a third branch.
Right.
The founding fathers created 3 different branches
Right.
so that they could all of whom were required to take the oath,
Right.
could all act in accordance with that oath and support and defend the Constitution. And if the governor steps over the line, the legislature and the judiciary can say, no. And if the judiciary oversteps its authority and violates the Constitution, the legislature and the governor and the attorney general can say, no, not on our watch. We took an oath, we mean to keep it. The judge has said, don't certify the election. Don't follow the normal process. Don't follow the regulations and statutes. We're going to create a separate situation. In this case, and only in this case, don't certify the election. They can do that.
And as most of the people know here, and as you very well know also, is the judicial has sort of usurped, and the legislature and the executive branch have allowed them to do that, not only in your case, in my opinion, but in many, many other things that we are governed by in not only the state of Alaska, but the United States at this time.
Yes.
But with the legislature saying, quote, they're not going to get involved, and the executive branch saying they're not going to get involved or take a side, whatever you want to, then they acquiesced to the judicial, right?
Yes.
And so what option then do I have as a citizen in the state of Alaska besides, giving you a platform, finances, etc., praying for you, etc., because I'm certainly not being represented by the other 2 branches of the Constitution in the state of Alaska or in the federal Constitution, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, what recourse do we have besides the, 3 things, giving you a platform, financing and praying for you? I mean, what other, the rest of us here, what other option do we have? I mean, so anyway.
Great question. There is not, that I found yet, a really short answer. I've got a medium-sized answer that I'm working on that's getting better. Every time I give it, it gets a little bit better,
Okay.
I think. But I go back to an American of great renown, Albert Einstein. And if you've heard me talk about Einstein, you probably know what I'm about to say because we talked about it in court this morning. Back during the Cold War, when the same, provision of our Constitution was being written, Albert Einstein was very public, or at least it's now down to, it's been passed down to us so that we can read it, in his positions on how the Constitution works. I mean, he came from Germany, he was a naturalized citizen, he took the oath, he cared an awful lot about this country from what I've read and heard, and he said very eloquently, I think, the strength of the United States Constitution, the strength of the Constitution lies entirely in the willingness of each citizen to defend it.
That's right.
And that doesn't mean elected citizens.
Right.
Doesn't mean elected office holders. I mentioned that quote to a former U.S. Supreme Court justice and asked what their thoughts were about it, and they went right to reinterpreting what he said as though it was talking to judges. Even though he said, literally, every citizen, they went, oh no, it's the judges who they're the ones that defend the Constitution. But that's not what he said, and that's not what he meant, and that's not how it works. You can't have just one branch of government defending the Constitution.
Right.
And so that means that every single one of you as citizens, if you're a citizen of this country, there is some obligation that you have. And Albert Einstein went on further to say, and that might come at a cost.
Yeah.
That might come at a cost to your family, that might come at a cost to your finances, that might, who knows what other cost that might imply, but you have an obligation as a citizen. If the Constitution is to be preserved, each citizen has a responsibility to defend it.
Right.
And that is what we don't talk about anymore. And we hope that you can elect a David Eastman or a Micheal or a Mike Dunleavy or somebody, and they'll take care of that for you.
Yeah.
And you'll donate to their campaign or vote for them or whatever, and you won't have that obligation anymore. And that is not the way it works. I wish it did. I mean, there's more than a few times I wish that it was as simple as that. But since anyone can attack the Constitution, there's not enough of us in elected office to defend it, frankly. And so, yes, there are things we can do. I go back to Mr. Maxwell. You start by holding people accountable. Because I can do a little bit of that as an elected official, but the only reason I can do it at all is because I'm representing people in the public who ask me to, who hope that I will, who expect me to, who say, as one of my constituents did when I was first running for office, said, we talked about what's the job of the legislator, was to defend, the rights of the citizens. And he said, yeah, that's the right answer. And you're the first candidate I've talked to that's actually said that. So, I want to vote that day. But it's not about just voting. It has to be more. And it is not about just being in the right party. And it's not about holding the right positions. Because honestly, I think Christopher would probably tell you the same, the positions in Juneau don't matter most of the time. Somebody runs for office, they say, I'm going to do X. You get down to Juneau, and all the other legislators say, don't worry about that. We're here in Juneau now. Worry about us. We're the ones here. Make us happy. Don't worry about them until the next election.
And I think maybe when you've been here before, you talked a little bit about the Legislative Council, I believe is the one that made the decision not to give you the support.
Yes.
And is the votes that were, or the vote that was taken in that council meeting, is that public information?
It is.
Okay. And would you like to talk a little bit
Oh,
about that?
absolutely.
So then,
We have-
where I'm trying to go with this is that then I am able then to judge, okay, if my representative or my senator was serving in that legislative council and they voted not to give him the support, then that is somebody that I can use to pressure. And of course, Governor Dunleavy was just elected. I will assume probably a lot of people here voted for him. So we need to start pushing that also. I wish I would have thought about this earlier, would have a petition back there for you to sign, but all of you are very capable of going on, sending an email, calling his office, and that kind of thing. But anyway, so follow up with the village council.
So we did, my attorney and I, put the position before the legislature and said, hey, we think you have a stake in this. The judicial branch is literally going after the legislative branch. There are attorneys that the legislature has, on salary or can hire on contract to fight their cases. Maybe this is a case that, you'd like to do that for. Since if the judiciary starts making the decisions that so-and-so can't be in the legislature, well, what's that going to mean for the future? Are you a sovereign branch anymore if another branch can decide who makes you up? And if they don't like you, replace you with somebody else. I mean, it'd be like the governor coming in and saying, I don't like you, Christopher, I'm going to switch you out with somebody else. And not a sovereign branch of government anymore at that point. And when I say sovereign, I mean coordinate. I don't mean an ultimate. But in any case, yes, Shelley Hughes was the only member of the Legislative Council to vote yes, that the legislature had a duty and responsibility to intervene. There were, I think, 9 other votes on the other side. There were some legislators who didn't cast votes for various reasons, they weren't there or whatnot. But I'll say I think Shelley got that one right. not because it's my case, but because the legislature has a stake. They should have something to say about this for the sake of their own responsibilities to you, the people, that the legislature is supposed to represent. So glad for that. Thank you to Senator Hughes for putting the motion forward. Sorry that it didn't pass. It was part of the process that we needed to do before we could get to here. We had to go to the legislative branch and say, ask that question, get that answer back, and then, move forward with the case. I mean, if you look at it practically, you have one person who is not in District 27, which I was just elected to represent, who is suing somebody who is in District 27, and really not just me, he's really suing the 18,500 voters in my district who just voted for me or didn't vote for me. And some people voted for the other guy or didn't vote at all. They're all still citizens and deserve representation in government. And that person is telling all those people, you're wrong, you effectively broke the law, and now I'm asking a judge to come in and fix it. And since you can't practically sue 18,000 people in this state, they sued me instead. So here I am on behalf of 18,000 plus people, and really more than that, because obviously it's impacts more than just my district, more than just Republican voters, certainly. It affects us all. And the idea that you can do that, again, this is kind of a new idea. Not just in this state, but also in other states. It's kind of a new idea. I was talking this morning with Coy Griffin, who is a county commissioner in Otero County, New Mexico. And they got a judge to say that because he was outside the Capitol building, that he was part of that civil war that happened that the Republicans lost, and so therefore he can't hold government. So a judge came in and said, you were elected as a county commissioner, you cannot be a county commissioner anymore. And they took him as a Republican and they replaced him with a Democrat. And so he's fighting his appeal at the New Mexico Supreme Court right now. But again, this is the same idea, different state, different story, same idea. And the same idea is behind it as well. Question back there, is there a microphone?
No.
Okay.
We use a mic, thank you. There you go.
I'm just trying to figure out the whole premise of the court system, right? Declaring that you're a communist, criminal, and terrorist. And so, just kind of looking through the Constitution of the state of Alaska, and I know you already referred to it, but with that false accusation, can't you, and they're coming against your due process and coming against your rights of the accused to have a jury, it says here, 12. I can't understand it. I mean, the whole thing is so illegal. They should be sued. I mean, and if our governor isn't going to do anything, there needs to be accountability and an aggressive move against what they are doing, because it goes against our Constitution.
Agreed.
And so why is there that premise of you're being considered a communist criminal?
Sure. Practically, I mean, there is no difference between being accused of being an Oath Keeper who's trying to overthrow the government and being accused of a Marxist revolutionary from Colombia who's trying to overthrow the government. The Constitution looks at both people the same way. And so, I mean, you can say you're an ISIS terrorist and it accomplishes the same purpose. You're trying to destroy the United States. Therefore, you should be treated like an enemy. Therefore, nobody should be able to vote for you. That's the argument in a nutshell. The premise, such as there's a premise, is that individuals are anti-government. They're in a group. You're in that group. Therefore, you must be anti-government too. What's that? Yes, upholding the Constitution. Now remember, not everyone believes that the Constitution should be upheld. The Marxist group from Anchorage that has spent the better part of 2 years coming after me to expel me for not upholding the Constitution wants the Constitution not to be upheld. has a principal objection to having a constitution. Well, to having the government that the Constitution is built on. Wants that government to go away so that they can build something better, ostensibly. So not everyone in our society, not every American citizen is committed to the Constitution. Some look at that as a document that is wrought through with racism. As you might remember, one Democrat member of the Anchorage Assembly said not too long ago. But now recognize, in this state, that Democrat was just elected to the Alaska State Senate. And that Democrat was just now elevated to the majority in the Senate by Republican senators leaving the Republican caucus and joining the Democrat caucus. So that person is now in a position of leadership in our state government. That's where we're at.
David?
Yes?
This whole trial is totally ludicrous, and I would hope and pray that the decision comes out on your side. So my question is, if that is the case, can you file a lawsuit for defamation of character and both emotional and financial hardship, and recoup all the expenses that you have gone through and will go through?
Well, can and may are not always the same thing. You can file a lawsuit. Will it be successful? It's a very different question. I mean, any of us can file a lawsuit for defamation of character or whatnot. And certainly, you know, in the written documents, I mean, the black and white letter, they've, as a part of moving this trial forward, come out and said, you know, we're absolutely 100% convinced that David Eastman is a fascist, he's a white supremacist, he's an anti-Semite. I mean, it's a long list, all to get us to here where we are today. Now, when you put those same people under a sworn oath and say, what does white supremacist mean? You get answers like, well, that means that they're an anti-Semite. Oh, then you ask them what's an anti-Semite mean? Well, that's kind of like the white supremacist. So there's no difference, or effectively no. It's like, no, they're both the same because they're all part of the same bad thought. And of course, you've got to put the bad thought label on the Republicans so that you can go after them politically, or try to. There is no guarantee of getting any of my expense back. You know, if I have to sell my house to fund the lawsuit, there's no promise that I get that money back and I can go buy my house back or whatever it is. That is not promised or maybe even expected. Because in this state, and I'm really not trying to destroy your morale or your hope. I'm not trying to. I am trying to simply tell you how it is, and then maybe we need to come back another night and talk about what to do about it. I mean, because there is a what to do about it, and Edna partly asked that question. Well, what can we do about it? We can hold people accountable, because they're not being held accountable. Mr. Maxwell is absolutely right. They are not being held accountable. And they hold up, you know, excuses for why we shouldn't hold them accountable, like, well, they're in our same political party, so don't hold them accountable. Go after the other people. And who's going to hold the people in our party accountable? You expect the Democrats to do it? No. They are glad that they're not being held accountable on these things. And so, maybe we get some of the money back. Maybe we get none of the money back. I don't know. I don't know. If I had another attorney and more money, could I file a countersuit right now? I could. Do I have the money and the attorney to do that right now? No. Joe Miller doesn't have any more time. He's not getting sleep as it is, just fighting this lawsuit. John Eastman, who's, you know, helping with the lawsuit, you know, he just had the January 6th committee today come out and pass a criminal referral to the Department of Justice saying what a bad guy he is. So he's having to deal with that while he's trying to work on my suit as well. So there is no promise of return. There's a possibility. You know, maybe at some point you point out how obviously political this is. This isn't about the Constitution upholding it. They're trying to accomplish a political objective. They tried at the ballot box, they failed. Now they're trying to expunge their failure at the ballot box by getting a judge to come in and do it for them. That's literally what they're doing. in a healthy society, in a free society, the public would have something to say about any party that attempted to do that. Just like earlier this year, when the Alaska Democrat Party, in their official state newsletter, wrote in black and white that they needed to expel a member of an opposing political party because of their political views. They did that. First time that I've seen, certainly since I've been in the legislature, and the public should have something to say about that. Now, there is something practically different about me, and I think about Christopher as well, but he wasn't on the ballot in the general election this year, unfortunately. They put us both in the same district, no accident there. So we both couldn't continue in the House, no matter how many votes we both got. The practical side of it is there are special interests. I hope that's not a surprise to anyone in this room. There are special interests in politics. There are unions, there are hospitals, there are chambers of commerce. There's a lot of special interests. You can expect in politics that if you represent certain special interests, they will have your back. They will make it uncomfortable for someone to come after you in a lawsuit like this. Maybe they will file a countersuit. Maybe they will intervene in the case with a law firm, with lots of attorneys to make it difficult for the other side to do whatever it is they're doing. So what happens if your representative is the one being targeted? Because part of being a representative of special interests means, to some degree, you're not representing your constituents. Part of being a representative of your constituents means, to some degree, you're willing to put them first over the special interests, over the hospitals, over the dental society, over the taxi cabs, whatever it is. And if you have a reputation, very few number of legislators in the state have, of putting constituents and what you believe their interests are first, those special interests will not have your back. That's what they hold out for when you're willing to put their priorities first. And if they had your back when you weren't representing them, then that's telling all their other legislators that you don't have to put their special interests first. And so that's not politically beneficial to them. So, how many candidates, statistics being what they are, in my campaign that I just ran, we won our election. There were the governor, the lieutenant governor, and 58 other legislators who also ran and won office. Of those who had a campaign, meaning at least one opponent that they were running against, I am the only one that did not have the backing financially of a political party, of a special interest group. There weren't any donations that came to me from groups, from parties. It was my constituents and my supporters, because that's who I represent. And that means, effectively, politically, there will be no special interest who will have my back when someone comes after me, comes after my constituents. So what that means is, either my constituents and others of like mind will step up and have my back, or I will not prevail. I mean, that's the math. I suppose I could go to one of the special interest groups and say, hey, I'm yours, just have my back. But that's probably not going to happen in my case. That's not why I'm here. So, that's not good news if you're a taxpayer and you have a limited income and you have limited political capital, because it means if you want someone like me, it doesn't have to be just me, but if you want anyone in government who is going to have your back as a voter, as a taxpayer, as a conservative, as an American, now there is something that you are going to have to do to make that happen. Because there isn't a respect for you to be able to elect who you want to elect, and that vote to be respected in government. Because remember, look at what's happening here. So they had a campaign They ran a Democrat against me in the 2020 election. They lost. And they said, we don't care that we lost. We're going to have another election in the legislature, and we're going to try and find enough votes to overturn your election. And then they lost that. And then there was a complaint with the Division of Elections. They filed 24 complaints against me. 24 opportunities for the Division of Elections to say, no, this person should not be permitted to get a single vote. They should not be permitted to be on the ballot. And they lost the Division of Elections. And then we had a general election. There was an opportunity for someone else to be elected other than me, and they lost that race as well. And so now here we are, after all that, we're still trying to overturn the election that they lost in 2020. We're 5 steps further into the process now. So the idea of just getting elected and other legislators in the process just respecting the fact that you're elected, that's not the way it works in Juneau. It literally works. You got elected, and now you have to fight your darndest to continue to be able to represent your people that you were elected to represent. Because just look what happened just in the Senate just 2 weeks ago. The legislators who were in the Senate were told fairly clearly and fairly publicly, which is kind of odd because usually it's private and you don't know about it. But in this state, we have an extremely corrupt legislature, and they were willing to tell you about it publicly. And what they told you was, you might have voted for a Republican, you might have voted for a Democrat, if you voted for one of the 8 Republican senators who just joined the Democrat caucus. What they're telling you is, you could have voted for me, you could have voted for my Democrat opponent. It kind of doesn't matter because you would have got the same thing either way. They were willing to tell you that. I mean, that's honest, I suppose. It's candid, but the punchline is, you don't matter. You don't matter at all. And so here we're in a situation now where that's public. The Republican party's had a chance to respond to that and say, you know, we just gave you money to run as a Republican, you just joined the Democrats, you know, slap your hand, do something, say give us our money back, say we're not going to give you more money next time to do it again because you just joined the Democrats. Our party isn't in a position to do any of those things. Our party just did the opposite. When my district put forward our resolution of censure of our Senator David Wilson and said, leave the Democrat caucus or resign from office. We want an actual Republican to represent our Republican voters in our district. The Republican Party came in and stopped it. Said you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to make those kinds of demands of Republican legislators. In any other state, that would have been pretty normal to be able to say that. Stop being a Democrat, come back, be a Republican. In our state, the Republican Party has effectively now said that you are not allowed to censure any of those Republican candidates, including Lisa Murkowski, who just endorsed a Democrat who is now our congressman. You are not allowed to censure Lisa Murkowski at least until 2/3 of the way into her next re-election campaign. Well, in the case of Peltola, or in the case of me or David Wilson or anyone else, because now what they're saying is there's a moratorium on being able to hold candidates accountable in that way until the state convention, which is going to be in April of 2023, right? 2024? 2024. So you're going to have all the candidates filing for office come May of next year, and they're going to be campaigning May, June, July, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Now they're 2/3 of the way towards the end of that campaign cycle, and for those first 2/3, they have protected every single one of the Republican incumbents from any kind of competition, ensuring effectively that they get reelected. Because the Republican Party has decided there was a conflict. The voters were over here, the politicians were over here, the party said, and that's where we stand today. Christopher.
Okay, so to follow up on Edna's question, and I guess to follow up on the point of accountability, certainly we should look and see when the judge is up for retention. We can try to hold him accountable. We can ask our senators to file articles of impeachment, because only the Senate can do that. But more directly, to follow on to Edna's question, it seems to me that the new Lieutenant Governor would like to have a political future, and would like our support in the future, whatever that political future is, which means she's more susceptible to being held accountable. And it would seem that because she's going to be picking a new head of the division elections, I don't know if that's been announced yet or who that's going to be, it would be a really great thing to pressure her to make sure your election is certified. Because if I recall, your judge had ordered the division elections not to certify your election. And I guess my question is, what exactly is the status of that? Have you been certified? Have you been notified of certification? Are you listed on the certified candidates that have been elected? If that's the case, it would seem to me the division elections, at least in some respects, is defying the judge if they've done that. If they've not done that, it seems to me we should be following up with our new Lieutenant Governor and demanding certification and not allowing the judiciary to intercede in this election and overturn it.
Yeah, good question. So, short answer is the Division of Elections through the Attorney General's office is arguing in court as though my race has not been certified, as though they have not followed the standard operating procedure, the rules and regulations that they followed in every other race. So that's what they're telling the judge in this case. Now, if you go onto the public website and you look at certification, you look for official results, they've got all 40 House districts listed, and they're all certified, and there's a certification saying we did our automatic hand count of one precinct of each of the 40 House districts, and the results are as follows. So, is the right hand talking to the left hand? I'm not sure. All I can tell you is those two things are happening right now, both at the same time. As far as what we can do, going back to Edna's question, a little bit from Christopher, one of the things that is most unsettling to the status quo, and we know, my districts believe, that the status quo is not serving their interests. It is not representing them, it is not protecting their rights, it's not protecting their interests, it's doing something else. Now sometimes that something else is terrible and sometimes it's not terrible, but it's something else, no matter what it is. And the status quo recognizes sometimes, if you read between the lines, that they know that it's not a good thing. And they know they're not on an entirely solid footing with what they're doing. Just like the 8 Republicans who just joined the Democrat Party have recognized that, gosh, that it's not a normal thing. Maybe it's not the best decision. Kind of some are hoping they'll ride it out. But when that happens, even one person raising an objection is a terribly dangerous thing for maintaining the status quo. And I'll tell you, and Christopher can tell you as well, the votes that Christopher and I heard the most about, certainly I did, maybe Christopher can tell you his own story, but the votes that I have heard the most about as a legislator are not the close votes where, gosh, David, if you only voted this way, we could have passed this bill or we could have killed this bill. It was just one vote difference. Those are not the votes that I hear the most about. The ones that I hear the most about are when 39 or 38 legislators are going off to do a certain thing, and it generally involves a little bit of less than honesty with the people. And one or two of us say, no, we don't want to be part of that. The status quo has a fit. And you're like, well, why is that? It had no effect on the outcome, none. They were going to win if they had 18 other legislators vote with us, they still would have won, kind of thing. But by virtue of simply a legislator saying, even if you don't say anything at all, just saying with your vote, I am not going to be part of that dishonesty, the status quo feels threatened. And they say to each of us who are on the wrong side of that, that you're on thin ice, man. You're not allowed to vote that way. You can't vote with your constituents on that one. That was a vote that we needed you to be on our side for. And so, I mean, the very first vote when I got down to Juneau was a vote like that. And nobody, told me that I needed to vote for the Democrat, but all the other legislators did. And I was the only one who was voting against electing a Democrat to lead the Alaska State House, because that wasn't my district. That's not how any of my constituents, other than the Democrats, would have wanted me to vote. And I knew that, and it wasn't a question. I didn't, struggle with that. But to give you an idea of where Juneau was at, that was a really terrible thing. I got told by most all the Republicans, oh man, bad decision. The Democrats in power now, they're not gonna like you. They're not gonna help you get whatever it is done that you wanna get done. So we've got a ways to go in this state to get to where we need to be. We are certainly not there. Our courts are a mess. Our legislature's a mess. The Senate's the great example. I mean, imagine going to 49 other states and walking into your Republican Party and saying, hey, most of your Republican legislators just joined the Democrat caucus. How is that going to go over? I don't know another state where that has ever happened. If it has, it's been before my time. But that's where we are. We're in that place. This is where God's put us. It's our home. It's our state. It's worth defending. It's worth fighting for. I'm not trying to fix every problem in government. Frankly, there's going to be corruption and bad things happen in government no matter where you're at, because mankind, human nature being what it is, there will be problems. Right now, the one battle that I'm facing is in the Palmer Courthouse down the road, and we are simply fighting to maintain the rights that we have written down on paper and are supposed to be ours. And we have some people on the other side who are saying, no, we don't want those rights to be yours. We want to accomplish our political agenda, and your rights are in the way. And so we are standing in opposition to that. So if you have the opportunity to learn more about the case, we've got all the court documents online. You can read them. You can see what the judge is saying. You can see what the other attorneys are saying. You can see what my attorney is saying. There's an opportunity to go there and make a donation to help us afford to pay the legal expenses of the case. You can pass that on to a friend or a neighbor or a relative or a rich aunt or uncle or whoever it is. We will not be turning any donations away. I can tell you that. And you can also be praying that my wife and I and our kids will be protected in this fight and won't be at each other's throats because of the stress and the lack of sleep and the kids' reactions to the stress and all the other things that a family has to deal with when you're under attack, because we are. And we're not asking for everything that's difficult to be done away, but we are asking that God will be glorified, and that the people that we have told that we, and me specifically, would represent, and the people who have given us their votes, some of them have given us donations, some of us have given their time, all of us have given their trust. All of them have given us their trust. And that we would be right in the trust that they have given us. And we would not violate that, and we would not take the opportunity to violate that trust and to say, for us this is a better decision, so we're no longer going to represent you. That's what we're hoping to accomplish. I've got, like I said, a lot of envelopes I'd like to give out to some people who are willing to support us financially. If you can't do that, I understand. We have a link, davidlegal.org. I hope that you will write it down or find it on the Facebook Live and pass that to someone else who can use it if you can't personally. If you know of anyone in radio or television or media who cares about these kind of issues, let them know about our case. We want everyone to know. We want people to understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish so that they can help us stop that from happening. So, it's been a long night. Thank you very much for sticking with us, for listening about cases and lawyers and attorneys, which are not entertaining topics for most of us. They just aren't. It's the first time I've ever seen, the inside of a courthouse as someone involved in a lawsuit on either side of it. I just haven't been there. So if you have any other questions, I will stick around later, and I will leave it at that. I'm sure there's more questions, but we'll let Edna wrap up, and thank you very much for being here tonight.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and close in prayer, and then Richard would like, for those that feel comfortable praying for David, and I know his wife and family probably want to come out too, and just pray for the whole group. Is that what you'd like, Richard? So, is there anybody that has any announcements? I don't think there's any political activities going on or anything like that, but is there anything else? Thank you all for coming out tonight. So if you stand up, please. So Lord, no matter how bad it looks according to what we see in the circumstances that's going on, Lord, we thank you for this country and the foundation of this country, Lord. And we will continue to stand, Lord, and show light on both the good and the bad, Lord, so that we can all share and follow the light, Lord, and that we will fulfill, each one of us, the plan and purpose that you have for our lives, Lord, and we will hold those accountable, Lord, especially those that we have voted for as well as supported, and give everybody a Merry Christmas and the best in 2023. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And
Come on
so
up.
they'll be
Pray for
here, so,
David.
yeah, so go ahead.
Or we can go back there where his family is.
The family will come. No, I don't.
Where do they go?
Oh, they're going to be later. People who were elected to those states, and somebody accidentally tweeted out.
Thank you all for being here today. It was greatly appreciated. Don't forget to like and share. You can find this video on Twitter, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Politadick. Also go to Rumble. Make sure to subscribe. Click subscribe, notify. Please come back. Thank you guys all for being here tonight. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for the trial with David Eastman. Thank you so much and have a great day.
So, Father, we just thank you, Lord, for this man, his wife, and her children, Father, that they have, Lord, are not afraid to war and do the right thing no matter what the cost, God. So, Lord, I pray for us, Lord, that we would, Lord, back them up, Lord, with everything that we can, Father. That, yes, we would pray, Father, but we would put feet to our prayers, Father. So I ask, Lord, that you would just send just thousands of angels, Lord, to surround them, Lord, the family in the bubble, Lord, of your protection, Father, and your love, Father. We just love them, Lord, and we thank you for them, Father. And so we ask, Lord God, that you would protect them, Lord, to send lots of angels, Lord, and surround them as they go to and fro in their vehicles or however they travel, Lord, that be fully protected, Lord, and that they would have peace, Lord, and get plenty of rest, Father. It is prayed for your anointing of health, Lord God, and that the joy of the Lord would be their strength, Father, in Yeshua's name. Amen. So, anyone else?
Lord God, we thank you for David.